Thanks for inviting me here today. 2 minutes. I was about to ask that. I thought it was a minute, so that's better than I thought. Thanks for inviting me here today to talk to you about social media engagement at the Coffin Works. Some of you might know what it is, that's the Coffin Works. Some of you might not, so I'll come on to the history of that shortly. But really, it's all about how we've managed to engage volunteers at the Coffin Works, rewarding them, inspiring them, and making, I suppose, increasing their sense of loyalty, which is really important for an organisation like Birmingham Conservation Trust, which is largely volunteer run. I'm one of 3 staff at the Coffin Works Museum. I'm part-time normally. There's one full-time person, another part-time person. Birmingham Conservation Trust has a director and then an admin assistant who works 1.5 days a week. So we're small and we rely on volunteers. And social media has been so important in increasing a sense of loyalty. So what am I going to talk about today? Really what has been achieved through our social media, and in particular how we've empowered volunteers, engaged people. It's such a good way of saying thank you. It really is. And this isn't rocket science. Really, social media, for it to work, it's all about the resources, not of money, but of time. So I'll come on to that in a minute. It's also about raising profile. So we have built the social media platforms up from scratch. Nobody really knew what the Coffin Works was, a few years ago, and we've really raised our profile through using social media, but also by managing perceptions as well, because people either love the name or they're put off by the name. But by taking control of your social media, you take control of your identity as well. That's so important. You manage what people say about you as well. I'll also be looking at why heritage organisations, building preservation trusts, whatever, should embrace social media. It's a tool for everyone and it's free, so there's sort of no excuse. But I don't think my line manager, Suzanne Carter, previous line manager, would mind me saying this. She's slightly obsessed, so am I. It's a bit of a hobby, so we don't mind that we don't get paid for doing this. We sort of just love it, and that's why it works. It's never been about marketing for us. It's always been about engagement. So social media isn't really a marketing tool. It's not a way to boost your marketing agenda. It's a communication tool. It really, really is. It's almost just like saying, I'm here, and that's it. It's not about really selling tickets. You've got to increase that sense of loyalty before you even try and sell something. So I'll also show you how we've achieved the right recipe, we believe, through social media and through engaging people. Before I go on to that, here's a really brief history of Newman Brothers. I know some of you are coming tomorrow, so it's going to be a potted history, I haven't got a lot of time. So, they were a casting company and they were established in 1882. They made cabinet fittings, so ornaments, handles for cabinets. But they quickly realised that if you can make a handle for a cabinet, you can make one for a coffin. And more people were dying than buying cabinets. It's as simple as that. You kept your cabinet on display for 3 decades, your coffin was on display for 3 days with the same brass fixtures. So they moved to the present site, Fleet Street, in 1894, and they also made the shrouds, the cerements, all the textile-based products that went on the inside of the coffin. There were so many reasons why this trade declined. And by the way, they were that good that they made the coffin fittings for members of the royal family as well. We've just proved that. George V, George VI, Queen Mother, Diana, the list goes on. But changing perceptions, especially during the war, this ideal of the Victorian funeral at the First World War was quashed, because how could you have a funeral for somebody who didn't return home when the body wasn't repatriated? And also the violence of war really made people think about the funeral again. And then slowly but surely, the Second World War, people become more practical, the government starts building housing over cemeteries. It changes perceptions, the taboo around death really starts. Companies like Newman Brothers just couldn't compete with the market anymore. Many people began to be cremated. So we skip forward to 1998, and this is really a potted history, by the way. The last owner, Joyce Green, she was quite old at that point. She never got married, didn't have any children. So on one Friday afternoon in 1998, she, with a handful of her staff, set down the tools, walked out and closed the door for the very last time, leaving everything behind. And that everything forms the basis of this time capsule museum, which is extremely quirky. So a bit more about the rescue mission. It was a 15-year campaign. Joyce sold the building to Advantage West Midlands in 2003 for just under £400,000. They were a regional development agency. It was all going really well. Birmingham Conservation Trust were appointed as well. But then disaster strikes in 2009 with the recession. The funding is pulled. Joyce dies at that point as well, so she never knew that we got the money the year after. But in 2010, £65,000 was raised by Birmingham City Council and they bought the building. AWM sold it at a complete loss. These three pictures really show the timetable in many ways. The top right-hand corner there, you've got the building as it looked like in the late 1990s. At the bottom right-hand corner, what it looks like today. And now the complete transition from a factory into a museum. We allow visitors in. Now, we are a building preservation trust that puts people at the heart of the story. That is our social media rationale. So how do we do that? When I was thinking about what we actually do, because we haven't got a social media policy, it's so organic for us. We still need to write it, by the way. We tell stories about buildings, and then we use people and collections to tell those stories, and then we develop those stories on the various social media platforms. Now, Twitter is by far our most useful, our most successful platform, but it only allows 150 characters, you see, so you've got to combine that with excellent imagery. Now, I'll show you some of the imagery in a minute, but we're lucky enough to have my sister, who's a photographer, working on the project. She's a photographer and she volunteers. So we combine good content with an excellent image, and it really, really helps. And then we support that with Facebook and our blogging site as well, and they all work in tandem together. Now, social media allowed us to be open before we were open. So pre-restoration, during restoration, it was so important. People have said to me, well, how can I tweet if we're not open to the public? That's exactly why you should be tweeting, because you give digital access where physical access isn't possible. And the public love to know how you are caring for old buildings. This was one of our most popular Facebook posts, and all it really says is, look, we're reinstating the original 1892 design, taking the old 1960s windows out. People love that, and it engages them with a project and increases this sense of ownership as well. But our Twitter used to be really, really morbid, and I don't think she'd mind me saying it was run by a goth, really. So she was fascinated by the contextual side of the death trade and cemeteries. For me, it's never been about that. It's always been about this average-sized company in Birmingham, working-class history mixed with this, you know, upper echelons of society, the royal family, and then you mix it all together. It's just a great story. I do like cemeteries as well, mind you. So what did we do? For me, it was all about good imagery. That's what social media is about, particularly when engaging volunteers as well. Got two volunteers there. They're doing documentation. Quite, you know, a mundane task for so many people, but I happen to like it. Anyway, you had a good image, a splash of colour, a silly face, and it really helps to engage people. But more than that, it shows a validation of efforts as well and what we think of our volunteers by saying, look, we want to take a picture and tell Birmingham, the UK, what we think of you. And honestly, it's not rocket science, but the reward through social media is powerful. And people love pictures of people. This was our first birthday celebration last year. My sister took the photo, I bought a balloon, a few balloons, and some confetti shooters or poppers. They're fantastic, they're so much fun. And we created this image, and it became so iconic. But again, by saying to our volunteers, you are the reason for this success, we want to celebrate, we want to create this photo. They loved it, they loved being involved. Again, it's about validation. Last month, we won an award for customer service from the Museums and Heritage Show in London. And again, they were so proud. So what I did as well as take photos, somebody else said it's about mixing up media. Video blogs, or vlogs as they're called now, I thought that was a spelling mistake when I first saw it, are so popular. And I created a video blog to celebrate this and asked the volunteers, what does this award mean to you? I can't show that one, it is on our Facebook site, but I'm going to show you a few clips in a minute. Social media is also about just being incidental and having fun. I mean, Owen there is one of our best tour guides on the left-hand side. He's known for his extravagant hair. And one day he came in and I said, you look like Mr. Whippy. And he agreed. So I said, we're going to get some flakes, some strawberry laces and turn you into Mr. Whippy. And that's exactly what we did. And there was no, you know, profound content with this tweet. It was just entertaining our followers. And again, managing that perception and showing other volunteers that you can just have fun. At the bottom there, that's Barbara. She's our longest serving volunteer, worked on the project for over 10 years, but she was massively involved pre-restoration. It was her birthday, so I bought a cake, you know, organised for people to sing happy birthday, surprise happy birthday. That went down so well, more so than any physical present, because again, it's about saying, look how much we value our volunteers, it just so happens to be her birthday. It is as incidental as that in many ways. I want to show you this really quick 30-second video. This is Owen. I did a vlog for Volunteers Week. That was earlier this month, and it was about this video, why I love to volunteer at the Coffin Works. But I did a laughing montage, you see, at the end, and I was asking people really serious questions at the start, but the last question I said was, and they weren't expecting it, who do you dislike the most at the Coffin Works? And it made them laugh. Sometimes they did say Sarah, actually, but this is what's come out of that. So if we can play that, Carla, please. See, laughing is infectious, and it's a 5-minute video altogether. The next video is 30 seconds again, and it's 2 volunteers just saying why they love to volunteer at the Coffin Works. So if we can play that, please. That's the one. That's all right. It's okay. That hasn't gone yet. Thank you.
It's all about heritage and history of Birmingham, and that's where I'm from. I like to give something back to the people, so that's why I volunteer here. I've always loved history, and especially being from Birmingham. I've said that twice now, so that's probably just going to be boring, isn't it?
I've been a volunteer at the University of Coffin Works for nearly a year, and volunteering is really good. You can meet lots of people and learn new things, and the main reason, of course, was to volunteer to get experience, and that eventually led to a job here.
People volunteer for different reasons, but all of them love being highlighted, and this has worked so well. We also take part in campaigns, and we were shortlisted for the Historic England People's Favourite Project Award last year, which we did win, but it was based purely on public votes. And so we came up with this campaign called Bring It Back for Brum. It united the people of Birmingham and the West Midlands. And as I said, we did win it. And my sister works at Think Tank, she manages the front of house team there, and they even participated in it as well. So social media allows you to engage people, you know, across the sector and speak to your colleagues as well, which is really, really important. Networking, it really helps with networking. What I love about social media though is that it does generate free statistical reports for you. And it tells you who your visitors are, and by knowing who your visitors are, you sort of know who they aren't as well. And there, on our Facebook page in February, I can tell that 63% of our fans were women, 33% men. Most of them are from the United Kingdom, a few from the United States. If you're an admin on Facebook, you can get all this for free. Twitter is slightly better as well. You can see there the gender divide isn't so great. We've got still more women using Twitter, but again, the percentage there, I think it's 65%, something like that. Mostly our followers are interested in business and news, so you can target them as well. And that's how we've managed to engage not just our volunteers, but send out the right information in our tweets as well. So just to really sum this up, and I've got one last video I want to play as well. Why is social media important? It's free. The biggest resource is time. And I tell you that now. When, you know, my job description, it was really low down, but it's become a cool part of my job because I love it. The resource, as I said, is the time. It's a willingness as well. But let your volunteers do this. If you trust them, and we do hand over our Twitter and our Facebook occasionally to our volunteers. Occasionally change the passwords, that's what you make sure you've got to do. It's allowed us to attract, especially if they leave. No one's been bitter yet, though, of course. It allows you to attract wider audiences and engage with people in new and exciting ways. I can't stress how much imagery, good images are important. I think I can honestly say that if we didn't have a photographer on this project taking quality images, we would have struggled. Definitely would have struggled. And also, we couldn't have managed perceptions in the same way. It gives visitors a voice as well, probably too much of a voice for some people, but on a weekly basis we have people sharing pictures and their thoughts, and they say, I had a great time at the Coffin Works, you know. I was just talking to somebody else earlier about TripAdvisor. TripAdvisor has been our saviour, because people trust people. And so many people, as I said, do think, oh, Coffin Works, but then they go on to TripAdvisor, see that we've got this 5-star rating, it's down to the customer service, and they trust people. And again, that's down to our volunteers. It does increase this sense of loyalty and trust as well. We've just started doing promoted posts on Facebook, just to try and get our information out there. So I've started to pay for posts, in fact. £10, I set a budget over a week, and it guarantees how many people your image or content will reach. But you've got to have a base before you do that, and you've got to have this sense of loyalty before you do that, before it works, I should say. And we have used social media at every aspect of this project, so pre-restoration, during restoration, and now post-restoration, to carry on the Coffin Works story and the evolving story of the Coffin Works. And it's helped people connect at every single step of the way, and we would not be the place we are without social media, and we certainly wouldn't be the place we are without volunteers. I just want to play one last video and just say that David, it's only a minute long, so I haven't had the bow yet even, so David is a fantastic tour guide. I thought I was like just doing it too quickly. David's fantastic, he's one of our best tour guides, and he was so proud that he goes off and he gives talks at local history groups. And Simon Puteau, our director, came up with this fantastic idea for a donations box made from a coffin. There you go, it's themed. But then Suzanne Carter, my line manager, previous line manager, built it with her husband, and it's interactive. And David tells you all about why he loves that donation box so much in this short video.
Coffin Works is I can do talks, and would you believe I can put £20 in there and another £20 in there for the talks. And when I'm walking down the street, I pick up odd 5p pieces and pennies and so on and so forth, and they can go in there as well.
I think if you do it right, volunteers and social media can be your best asset, and David proved that perfectly there. So thank you for listening.
Excellent, thanks for that. Those of you who know me, of course, know that social media means nothing to me, and indeed I'm waiting for anti-social media. But interesting nonetheless. Our next speaker is Rebecca Madgen, who is